I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on the Spotlight Network, we're talking to Peter Pactor. He is a lifelong educator, professional storyteller, and now a passionate author who continues teaching through the written word. With more than 50 years in the classroom and decades of public speaking experience, Peter brings historical insight and heart to his newest novel. It is called Being Number Three. His deep love for reading, research, and meaningful conversation shines through every page and every encounter. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight, and we ask viewers like you to support authors like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his amazing books. The links are below this interview. And be sure to download the Spotlight Network TV app streaming on Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire TV. Peter, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
I'm glad to be here, and if I may, I'd like to thank my publicist, Tracy Noble, and Kai Jameson, who both work for Pinnacle Publishing Company, and they've been helping me along. So I appreciate them getting this for me.
Wonderful. Well, I'm glad they're doing great work by you, and I'm glad you're doing great work by them because your books are terrific. Your anthology is quite prolific at this point. How many books have you written, or do you have in print?
Book 9 is coming out in its Daniel series, but I have a fantasy book called Ring of Truth, which won 3 awards, and it's pretty funny, especially if you have an eighth grade sense of humor.
I
And
do.
And I also have another one, which I wrote in 1995, I guess, but I have it with me. This is a handbook for teenagers. I don't know if you can see it. I'll try to get it up there.
Okay.
Plus to hold on to.
Okay. Yep.
And when I was teaching, I used to keep these in my closet, and a kid would come in with a problem. He didn't even have to say anything. And I just say, come see me after school. And I would give him a book, and they'd take it. The last one was a big football player. And a week later, he came back and gave me a hug and said, thank you. I don't even know what the issue was, but I knew he had an issue because we talked a lot, and he just wasn't his normal self.
Well, that's great that you had these books to hand out, which basically help them reflect on becoming a good person, I guess.
I think so. That was the whole purpose. There are things, one of the reasons I'm writing on the books is because when I retired at 73, there are still things I wanted to teach.
Yeah.
And during the book, so if you've read the first one, and we taught my very first lesson that I would teach in class, starting about the halfway point of my career, was I am responsible for my life. I got upset with one of my girls in class, and she kept making excuses. She was smart and had a pretty good personality, but oh my gosh. And one day I just said to her, repeat after me, I am responsible for my life.
Mm-hmm.
I did that, the kids, and believe it or not, they got it. And after that, I hardly ever had a call from a parent the whole year because the kids took responsibility. If a kid came to my class and started giving me an excuse, a student would say, repeat after me, before I could even open my mouth. And it happened in other teachers' classes because they told me, and it happened on the athletic field. I was really surprised. It really changed the environment of the school, at least for the last 4 or 5 years I was there. Last two had changed because of the cell phone and our electronics.
Yeah. Well, I
But
think we could all learn by learning to say that more. I am responsible for my actions. I think that's what every person needs to embrace. Let's talk about your Daniel series. Give
okay,
us an overview of what it's about.
okay. Do you have a question on that, or do you want me to start?
Well, you could just give us an overview of the Daniel series, and you can just start.
What I have started doing, there are things I really wanted to teach that aren't always taught in school, and they should be. And uh, so I started with life lessons, and my first book was written particularly for the kids. It's more of a it's coming of age book, the first book, but the rest evolves a lot. And I wanted to make people think about the way they behave and the things they could do. I
Mhm.
mean, in my opinion, teenagers are absolutely amazing. I didn't always think this when I started teaching, but they do wonderful things that you wouldn't even believe. Uh,
Mm.
when I did my recommendations for students, I'd always have an interview with them, and I'd ask them questions. And one of the questions I asked was, "What did you do for someone else to help them?"
Mm.
And it was actually this one was actually the uh, president number one in his class, and he said, "I had a neighbor, elderly neighbor, and he couldn't get to the bathroom on his own, and his wife couldn't help him because she had leg problems. So every 2 hours I was home, I would take time out, go over and help him, and he did it for 3 weeks
Mm.
until he died.
Wow.
And I don't know if I would have done that. I mean,
Mm.
that's amazing. I had a girl come back from Vietnam. She went to visit an orphanage there, and she was so impressed that she started making zip purses, and she
Hmm.
sold them through the church, and the church got half, and the other rest of the money went to the orphanage. That's pretty amazing for a kid, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
They
Absolutely.
they can do amazing things if people would stop telling them no.
Yeah,
We don't have time for that.
right.
And so those are things I've been working on. I'm really concerned about. I did a TED talk a few years ago. I was asked by the owner of the contract here in Fort Worth to do a TED talk on education. And it's on my website, peterpactor.net. And in that, I talked about why schools are not doing their jobs. And in there are four reasons to go to school. One is to acquire knowledge, and I think these are increasing importance. Second is to learn how to learn, which we rarely ever teach in school.
Hmm.
The third one is to learn to express yourself well in both the written and oral fashion. And the fourth one, which I think is the hallmark of an educated person, is character.
Hmm.
And we have a lot of people today that my observation is they have diplomas and degrees, but they're not really educated because they behave poorly.
Yeah,
And our schools aren't doing that. And it really bothers me about the schools and what's happening with the kids. Because even, I'm not taking a political stance, but even if Trump can do all the things he said he could do, and it comes out, well, if we don't educate our kids, they won't pass it on.
yeah,
It just won't be there. And I feel sorry for them. Uh, kid, you know, I taught Latin.
hmm,
I love the Latin kids because they want to learn. They just want to learn.
yeah.
And I was at my second year at Nolan Catholic High School. I really liked being there. That's why I ended my career. Uh, and they asked me to teach world history honors. We didn't have an AP program at that time. And so I said, okay, I'll do it. And I walked in, and these are really bright kids. This may be the brightest group of kids, this whole class that I've ever seen in school. And I said, well, we're going to do this. You get 8 points for just being in the class.
Mm.
And it added to your average. And I said, this is what you're going to do. You're going to write a term paper every quarter, and you're going to teach it
Mm.
at the end of the quarter. And they said, well, this is awful. This is too much work. I said, well, you're getting 8 points for just being in the class.
Wow.
So, but they did, and they complained almost all year. But the next year, a student stopped me in the hall and said, I want to thank you. And I said, well, what for? He said, for making us write all those papers last year. I said, you mean the ones you complained about all year? He said, those are the ones.
Yeah.
And it was amazing because as much as they complained, I think I got, for every kid that took the class, I think I got a thank you note for it. And they
Wow.
worked hard and they enjoyed the class. They had to come in with a thesis statement about what they read. And I said, who wants to start? And then they start discussing what they read. And I saw many times one student hold on the whole class. And it was a good experience.
Yeah.
Just wonderful. And then they asked me to teach AP, and I said, no, I'm not teaching to a test.
Mm.
And that was it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it sounds like a wonderful experience. Sounds like the kids had a great teacher and the teacher had some great kids under his tutelage as well. As far as the Daniel series goes, let's just give the folks at home an overview of what the series is about.
Okay, in my series, I want you to question things that you always already take for granted. So you understand the first book, it's really a coming of age story. Daniel's parents are very rich. They wouldn't let him have friends his own age. He wouldn't let him go to school. They hired tutors for him. And he got all his education in this 3-story tower library on his estate. And he's totally autodidactic before he gets to school, and he knows everything except he has no social skills.
Hmm.
So this is what he has to learn in book one. And he makes one friend, his roommate, but before they could be friends, his roommate had to knock him down. And they became good friends, and they were lifetime friends.
Yeah.
And then he was in math class, but Daniel is in 7th grade math. He's 12 years old. And the teacher gives him a test to see where they are because it's his first class at the school. And Daniel finishes as soon as the test is written on the blackboard. And he stands at the desk. And he says, "May I help you?" He says, "Yes, I'd like tougher classes. I've already done this. I'm working on Euclid at home." And so the teacher goes to the principal and says he needs to have an advanced class. So they put him in geometry and they put him in advanced English because he's really well read. Everything he had was advanced classes. And he does well, but it makes him an outcast more like when he's in a junior English class. And he knows more than the other kids in there. That's challenging. And then in this book, grades come out. And everyone recognizes him as being smart and knowing everything, but they don't want to come to him for help because it's awful for a senior, for example, to go to 7th grade to ask for help.
Yeah.
And one of his friends, that happens to be a junior from the English class, comes in, and he's the biggest and strongest athlete, and he comes in to study with Daniel, although he didn't need to. He just wanted to break the mold here that it's right to get attention when you're a junior and the best athlete in the school from someone who's in the 7th grade. And they became really good friends, and they always studied together after that. And
so the books basically follow Daniel and his coming of age, right?
Yes, and in this book, yeah. But the story starts in 1928, so we're right a year ahead of the big stock market crash.
Right.
And so in my books, I have real people in them too. Like the first book, you probably don't know any of these, or maybe you probably know Herbert Hoover,
Sure.
but Bernard Baruch and Jesse Livermore, I introduced them in the first book. Both of those people made a lot of money in the stock market. And Bernard Baruch was the made a lot of money. He made $1 million and gave it to his father. And his father said, "Well, now you're making all this money. What are you going to do with it?" I don't think he ever worked again in his life, and except trade stocks. And he was Wilson's director of the War Munitions Board during World War One, and he went to Versailles with Wilson to help him get the treaty, and he worked on it when he came back. But actually, what he did after he came back, he'd sit in front of the White House across the street of the bench, and the president would come in and say, "Come on over." And he was an advisor to presidents from that time on, even into 1964 when he died.
Amazing.
And
Let me ask you this. Where are we by book 8? How far are we into Daniel's life? What year is it?
we are in the beginning. Book 8 is the beginning of the Depression. Book 5, it's changed. And I'm telling you, I'm challenging your beliefs. I talk about the changes in the schools, what they should look like instead of what they do look like, because you and me, I went to public school. I don't know if you did, and they look the normal from the outside, but they're not the same as when you and I went. They're not even as good, and they weren't good when I was there.
Right.
And there's no reason for a student, in my opinion, like Daniel, to be bored in class because he's aged for 7th grade. He has to be in a class and learn material he already knows. That's a waste.
Yeah, certainly there has to be some adjustment for individual learning styles, individual capabilities. And this book series, I think, is just terrific because it not only explores coming of age, but it also explores historical characters and the times that were very significant in that era. Wonderful. We've been talking to Peter Pactor. He is a lifelong educator, professional storyteller, and now a passionate author who continues teaching through the written word. With over 50 years in the classroom and decades of public speaking experience, Peter brings historical insight and heart into his books, including his newest novel, Daniel, being number 3. His deep love for reading, research, and meaningful conversation shines through every page and every encounter. These books are highly recommended. The links are below this interview. Peter, thank you so much for joining me here today on Spotlight.
Well, I'm glad to do it. It's fun. I wish we had more time.
I wish we had more time as well, sir. We're over time, but it has been great talking to you. I appreciate your wit, your wisdom, and your insight. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.